All right, here we are. We're going to do our preseason power rankings. I'm Brendan, and with me we have Scott Hornig, the manager and owner of the Dynasty Champions. How you doing, Scott?
Mr. Ritchie, thank you very much for having the Dynasty Champions a part of this. We are very excited to go over how awesome the Dynasty Champions will be and how bad the rest of the league members will be. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, we'll see about that. But anyway, just to kind of give you guys a little preview of what's going on today, we're just going to be doing our combined preseason power rankings of each team, along with the prediction of like what the team's records will be. These are going to be based on each team's starting lineup, their bench. If they have past performance in the league, that's contributed to our ranking as well. And then also their future outlook for the rest of the season. So we're not just looking at week one, we're looking at the season as a cumulative whole. So if the team might start out of the gate hot and then maybe get weaker as the season moves on, we're taking that into consideration. And then also the reverse is true as well. So before we get started here, we would like to thank our sponsors. I know the Dynasty Champions wants to thank one right off the bat here.
Absolutely. So we are super excited to have Fairlife partner with us. The Dynasty Champions right here have the whole milk chocolate from Fairlife. Now, the special part about the whole milk is it has 125 milligrams of omega-3s. Apparently that helps your brain. So, you could use all the brain function you could get. Now, is the whole milk better than the 2% that Fairlife offers? We're not sure. We think it tastes the same, but grab some Fairlife from your local store. Great stuff right here.
Yeah, no, I agree. I got some Fairlife in my fridge right now as well. It's really good stuff. The Heroes Dynasty Deserves, my team, just picked up a sponsorship from Honey Nut Cheerios. Very delicious cereal. I have this every morning with some Fairlife regular whole milk. Just a shot Fairlife again. It's that 1-2 combo. You can't get enough of it. Really good for your heart too. And it tastes great to boot. So really happy to pick up the Honey Nut Cheerios sponsor. And yeah, so we'll go ahead and get started with the power rankings here, starting at number 12. Number 12 was a consensus number 12. Both Scott and I felt that the discount Belichick's owned by Kevin would be the worst team in the league this year. Finish 0-13. This ultimately comes down to they have one bottom tier starting quarterback that could be replaced by like week 4. Ryan Fitzpatrick is his only starting quarterback. I guess he could get Nick Foles if Trubisky struggles, but it's not a guarantee. One positive, I guess, is that they have really good wide receivers, but they really lack depth at RB, which is what you really need to be successful in this league, especially in PPR. They get the carries and the receptions. So it's just really hard to envision that this team gets more than maybe even a couple wins in their team's inaugural season. I think 0 is more likely. So what do you think about that, Scott?
Kevin, here's the deal, man. I want you to notice that both Brendan and I agreed that you are going 0-13. Now, as we speak, I think David Johnson's close to putting up a 16 spot this week. So I'm a little my concern about winning this week went from about a 0 to about a 0.5. So David Johnson's keeping you in there. But, dude, you could go a couple weeks this season without having a quarterback. I mean, Tua could be in by week 4, like Brendan said, and who knows? I mean, you might have both quarterbacks on the bench for all we know. You got some good PPR receivers, Cooper Kupp, Adam Thielen, good core right there. But I really don't see you beating anybody this year, Kevin. And to be honest with you, you might lose by 100 points this week. You're going to feel the wrath of what the Dynasty Champions have to offer week 1.
Well, you heard it here first. The Dynasty Champions are going 1-0 this week. So probably thanks to Fairlife. Anyway, moving on to number 11 in our preseason power rankings. So just to clarify, for numbers 11 through 8, the way Scott and I did our rankings is we did an average. And numbers 11 through 8 all came out to an average of 9.5. So these are in no particular order. They're just in the rankings that I personally had them in. But you'll see that Scott disagreed slightly with a couple of the orderings here, but they came out to all being the same. So anyway, number 11, we'll just start with Mike Vick in a box, the team owned by Austin. I have them ranked 11, Scott with 8. There is a slight difference in our thinking here. Scott will get into that in a little bit, but it comes down to how we value the quarterback position slightly. Overall, we don't think he's a playoff team, and that's mostly due to his roster just being absolute garbage at every position that isn't quarterback. But I mean, the quarterback depth is fantastic. You've got Cam Newton. If he goes down, you got Jared Stidham. You've got Joe Burrow. You've got Kyler Murray. So there's a lot of really good young quarterback talent on this team. But you can't start the quarterback at every position. So if you don't look at the rest of the roster, this team's good. But it's only up from last year for this team. It's hard to be worse than he was last season. So it's only up from here for Austin. It ultimately comes down to the QBs. I mean, Scott, what are you thinking here?
Yeah, this kind of goes into the great debate on how valuable you still think QBs are. Now, Austin, the reason why I'm giving you 5 wins is because if you start the right 2 quarterbacks every week, they have a good chance of significantly outscoring your opponents. Now, that could mean having to start Teddy Bridgewater on the right week. He's someone that can go off if Carolina's going to be successful. But your problem could end up being you start the wrong 2 quarterbacks and you leave a lot of points on the bench. And that can't happen because your running back and wide receivers are not great. Relying on that Jacksonville backfield, that's tough. That's tough. I don't see them putting up a lot of points regardless of who's in there. It's a rough team that's going to be throwing a lot. But you're built for the future. The good news is, in future years, Kyler Murray is going to be there. Joe Burrow is going to be there. But overall, not a playoff team this year, Austin.
Yeah, and to your quarterback start-sit thing you brought up there too, we saw that happen with Ryan last year and the year before that as well. Sometimes he was hurt by the quarterbacks that he chose to start. He had the wrong one on his bench and the wrong one in his lineup. So it really is going to be a start-sit week by week sort of thing for Austin this year. So if he wants to have any shot at the postseason, he's basically got to be perfect. Just don't see that happening. So moving on to number 10. Again, no particular order, but Mr. Yunt, owned by Mr. Patrick Dingus. I have him ranked 10. Scott has him ranked 9. So not much of a difference. A little bit of a difference in the record. Ultimately, you better hope Haskins pans out. Otherwise, Matt, you're relying on Matthew Stafford to get you into the postseason. As I said, your playoff hopes rest on his back, and it's not a great back. So you better hope Haskins pans out to be able to take some of that load away from Stafford. Overall, this is a veteran squad, putting it very euphemistically. You've got T.Y. Hilton, basically just like a very old core of players on this team. But the good news is you're a very historically overachieving franchise. And I mean that in a nice way. A lot of times people have thought, like, how is this team in this postseason run right now? And you've found a way to get there. I don't know if that's via coaching, by luck, whatever you have it, but you always seem to be in the thick of things, at least early on. So.
Yeah, you bring up a good point there, Brendan. Patrick, I'm going to be completely honest with you. Since year one of this league, I've always thought your roster sucked. And I mean that in a mean way. However, you found a way to win games, and that's why I give you 5 wins this year. You're somehow going to pull these out of your butt, whether it be on an interception last second or Matt Stafford, hopefully, God forbid, he doesn't fumble the ball in the last play and causes you to lose more games again, like the championship. But, you got Josh Jacobs. You have a good core of starters to go with. Hopefully Josh Jacobs can continue to build off that rookie year he had. Now, the one thing you got going for you is that logo. That's a nice-looking photo of Mr. Yunt right there. How many years has it been now since we've had him as a teacher? I hope he's doing well with his triplets. And I cheer for you because of your name and that logo you have, Patrick.
Yeah. Well, good luck to Mr. Yunt this year, and good luck to the real Mr. Yunt as well. I'm sure managing triplets has got to be a real pain in the butt sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, moving on to number 9. We've got the Mun Dynasty, owned by Mr. Shinwoo Mun. I have him at rank 9. Scott's at 10. So basically, we just had Patrick and Shinwoo flip-flopped here. Overall, this team just screams the word average. Just average. Every player is just average. Derek Carr is average. Marcus Mariota is average. Jimmy Garoppolo, probably just average. He's more of a game manager. Mitchell Trubisky, I know you don't have him anymore, but he was very average also. Amari Cooper, average. The only player on your team who is not average is Dalvin Cook. And if he's not a god, you have no chance of the postseason. It's that simple, really. You've been a perennial bubble team. You made the postseason one year in the past. It's really hard to envision this team making a run. You just have no game breakers, in my opinion. And if Dalvin Cook gets hurt, just kiss the season goodbye. It's not happening. Scott, what do you think?
Yeah, and within the last 48 hours, the Dynasty Champions spoke with the Mun Dynasty, and they themselves, Shinwoo, the owner there, is not too optimistic about how this season looks. He says he may even be in a position to have the number 1 overall pick next year. So they're fully prepared to tank if necessary. And Brendan, I'm going to be honest. I think saying some of his players are average, like Derek Carr, might be even a little generous. I think the core of his team is below average. And I got to call him out here. That fantasy free agent draft we just had earlier in the week.
Yeah, that was embarrassing.
Not good. Came into that free agent draft unprepared, had a chance to boost his team a little bit, fill some of those roster spots, but he ended up with players like Antonio Brown. And in addition to players he's never heard of. So not a good recipe there, Shinwoo, but you know what? Maybe you can make the playoffs through another controversy, maybe get another Mun controversy in there.
Yeah, I will say though, Scott, everybody does make a mistake every once in a while and draft a free agent. So,
all right, yeah, that's fair. Raji Bonafonte's going to be on an NFL roster here soon. You watch.
We will see. Yes, probably backing up the backup. So, all right. Moving on to the 8th ranked team, we move on to probably my favorite name in the league, the Krispy Kremes. Very unique logo and name. I'm a big fan. I have them ranked 8. Scott, not a big fan of the roster, though, has them ranked at 11. Again, averaging out to a 9.5, though. Overall, this team is definitely built to win now, if you want to say that. It's a very aging and injury-prone core of players. Definitely not the freshest bats and donuts, if you will. And they seem to be lacking very heavily at wide receiver, which could harm them, especially since it is a PPR league. You need receivers that catch the ball very frequently or go for big yardage, and it doesn't appear that this team has the depth at that position. But they are built to win now. They have the players to do that if they stay healthy. And that's a big if, considering their running backs are Le'Veon Bell and Todd Gurley, and their main quarterback is Ben Roethlisberger. So it's definitely going to be an interesting year for the Krispy Kremes.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Brendan, in the beginning, the one thing they got going for them is their logo and team name. Chris, I'll give you an A+ on that. Now, part of the reason for this 2-11 record might be a little biased because we do have a bet. Seems like I got a lot of bets going on with the Boy Docs here. So I need Chris to, I believe that it was 6.5 over under. So I'm feeling pretty confident about that bet, considering I have him with 2 wins this year. Now, you mentioned the core of his roster lacking heavily at wide receiver. Well, that is not the main problem I see with Krispy Kreme. I mean, relying on Ben Roethlisberger and Ryan Tannehill. Now, I know Tannehill had a good year last year, but I just don't see that replicating. I think he's down to kind of go back to the middle of the pack. He's never been that great. He was never great with Miami. So I just don't see him being an elite quarterback. And relying on Le'Veon Bell and Todd Gurley. I mean, Bell should have a good year. He's a big part of that New York Jet offense. But yikes, I don't like the team overall, Chris. You should be able to pull out a few. Maybe you'll beat Kevin. Maybe you'll beat Austin. Maybe get another win here and there. But yeah, just not feeling it, Chris. But you are an expansion team, so give you a little out there.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, so that wraps up the Krispy Kremes, and we'll move on to number 7, which we are in agreement on, is the Vegas Koalas. We think they will be this year's bubble boy. Essentially, this team will finish with a winning record, just barely, but they're really, really, really counting on the ascension of Calvin Ridley and Justin Herbert. Without Herbert, they'll be hurting, but if they don't get Calvin Ridley taking the next step, similar to how Chris Godwin did last year in Tampa Bay, this team is really lacking that big wide receiver that you need to be successful in this league. They are a 2-time toilet bowl champion, if there's any prizes for that. But they'll probably just be a middle-of-the-road team this year and come up just short. What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, and even after thinking about 7-6 might be a little generous, but the starting lineup is solid overall. I think at some point here, Carson Wentz is going to prove to the rest of the league that he is an elite quarterback that deserves to be talked about as one of the best. Maybe this is the year for that. Eagles got a lot of weapons, but you're exactly right. I mean, if Herbert can take that starting job from Tyrod Taylor and kind of come into his own, be that generational talent, that would be huge for not just this year, but for the future of the Koalas. Yeah, not a fan of his bench overall. Maybe you could get some good waiver wire pickups throughout the year, but I don't see him being towards the bottom. I don't expect to see the Koalas in the toilet bowl. He'll be competing for a playoff spot.
Yeah, no, for sure. And if Herbert does ascend, that puts him in a really good spot for this year and in the future as well. But if he doesn't, then they're going to have a real problem, especially in the future, because now they've wasted a 4th-round pick or a 4th overall pick on a quarterback that busted, and Phillip Rivers is close to retirement. So it's a very, very delicate spot for the Koalas. They really are counting on Herbert to be good. So, yeah. Anyway.
Still got a good logo, though, and team name.
Yeah, good koala. Before we move on to the upper half of the league here, we would like to take another sponsor break. I'll start, I guess, this time around. Freddy's is my sponsor for this time. They have really good steak burgers, way better than Steak and Shake, in fact, because Steak and Shake service is horrible. Freddy's is where it's at. And you can get this really good steak fry and burger seasoning. But it's better for just burgers. I used it on some chicken that I cooked the other day, and oh my God, it was really good on some oven-baked chicken. It was good stuff. So you should definitely try out some of this Freddy's steak burger seasoning if you get the chance. It's definitely a good call.
Ooh, Brendan. All right. Now we agreed on that. We kind of had that Fairlife Honey Nut Cheerio combo going here, but we're going to be competing. I got 2 things to disagree with. Now, I know Steak and Shake's been closing around the country, but I'm not going to say Steak and Shake's is worse than Freddy's. I think they're kind of even. But the other thing you said is to put that Freddy's seasoning on chicken. Now, here, let me tell you a story. Here we got Frank's Red Hot Buffalo Sauce, all right? Now, the next time you make chicken, I want you to consider this Frank's Red Hot Buffalo Sauce. It's delicious on that oven-roasted chicken. Now, sure, could you put Freddy's seasoning? But I think this stuff is so good, you could just drink it from the bottle. In fact, I might take a swig right now. I highly recommend Frank's Red Hot Buffalo Sauce.
Yeah, pop that back, Scott. Yeah, good stuff. You might need some chocolate milk now.
It's good to mix, right?
Yeah, right, yeah. Anyway, moving on to number 6, we have the Dynasty Champions. We have a consensus 6th rank here, finishing 8-5, just squeaking ahead of the Koalas into the postseason. This is going to mainly come down to the fact that they finally have two solid quarterbacks that they can rely on each week in Aaron Rodgers and Matt Ryan. I think that's going to be a very good, solid a position that the Dynasty Champions can rely on week in and week out with consistent production. However, if they want to maintain that success, they're going to need their running backs to stay healthy. Sony Michel has had problems with the knee in the past. They're going to need to maintain that. They're going to need him to be in the lineup in order for them to have a successful run into the postseason this year. I will say that in the past, this team really hasn't lived up to their name yet, but they do have an outside shot to earn it this season if they want to go that route. So Dynasty Champions probably squeaking into the postseason at 6. What do you think, Scott? What's your analysis of your own team?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that third bullet point you have there, Brennan. But you know what? Other than that, I'm going to give you a very honest assessment here. Quarterback should be solid. Being able to start Rodgers, Ryan, and Drew Lock a week in and week out, choosing 2 out of those 3 shouldn't be a problem. Now, running backs and wide receivers are different here. The running backs are weak. I'm really relying on Kenyon Drake to be a top 5 fantasy running back this year. And then James Conner and Sony Michel as your number 2, the other one being a bench spot. Those are tough to rely on. I don't know if they're going to have good seasons or be healthy, like you said. Now, the key to the success is going to be the coaching from the Dynasty Champions in the wide receiver department. We feel here that we have probably 8 to 12 wide receivers that we can roll out week in and week out. And at least 4 to 5 of them will be successful. Not a lot of them are your big name, like Julio Jones, DeAndre Hopkins. There are a lot of slot guys that should rack up a lot of catches, but it's going to be up to starting the right guys each week that are going to be putting up the points. And I think, luckily the Dynasty Champions have a great coach, this guy right here, to set the right lineups. But if I don't, it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, I guess if you don't, then you could have the Vegas Koalas nipping at your heels trying to get into the playoffs there. So you probably have a little bit of wiggle room, but not a whole lot when it comes to starting the wide receiver. So you're going to have to be close to perfect this year with your weekly start sit decision. So yeah, anyway, squeaking into the playoffs at number 6, the Dynasty Champions. Moving on to number 5. Again, we agree it is the Green Machine from Alex Boydock. We agree here, but a lot of it is so dependent on Kirk Cousins staying healthy, and not only staying healthy, but probably being a top 12 quarterback. The Vikings need to throw the football. They probably will more this year as the defense probably takes a step back a little bit. But other than this quarterback, the starting lineup and wide receiver depth is very, very legit. You just look down the roster. You have Stephon Diggs not starting in your weekly lineup this week, which is just insane that you can afford to do that. You have Tyreek Hill as a big alpha wide receiver. And I just can't get over the fact that you don't have to start Stephon Diggs. That's pretty legit wide receiver depth. Ultimately, they're shooting for probably another Boydock Bowl this year. Maybe they can make it happen. Of course, that would be with Mr. Boydock, not with Chris. But, the roster could be good enough to make a title run, but a lot of it is riding on Kirk Cousins and Gardner Minshew being serviceable.
Yeah, here's the thing. I know we talked about this off air, Brendan, but I had a hot take that Austin could be better than Alex this year. All right, and that's because of Austin's quarterbacks. Now, like Austin and Alex kind of have complete opposite teams. Austin's got great quarterback and quarterback depth. Alex has amazing running back and wide receiver depth. But it would be beneficial to me if you remember, we got a $100 bet riding on this season. I'm not sure what happens if we both go 8-5. I guess we take our money back. But for me, I'm hoping Kirk Cousins tears his ACL on Sunday. I know that's a little mean, but Alex, I gotta respect what you got going on. even through the expansion draft, I think you lost some running back and wide receiver still, and then you still had plenty to work with. I'm excited for this season. I know we both play Austin twice, and then you have Kevin twice, and I have Chris as the other double. So pretty even overall. You got your dad week 1. That's going to be a tough matchup. So best of luck this season. But Kirk Cousins is going to get hurt. Calling it.
And it's also probably a good time to talk about like our quarterback evaluation a little bit too. So me personally, I feel like when we went to Superflex, quarterback took a slight hit in their value, ever so slightly. It's not like they went down like tremendously, but it went down enough to where now you can afford to only have 2 quarterbacks rostered as opposed to 3. Before, if you didn't have a third quarterback, you were really in trouble when it came to bye weeks because you couldn't start anybody in that second quarterback position. Now with the super flex, you do have a little more flexibility to throw a wide receiver or running back in there. That's basically where I'm coming from. Scott, really, you don't think the value has changed that much at all? In fact, do you think it might have gone up?
Yeah, and I hear what you're saying. But here's my point. Starting 1 quarterback versus being able to start 2 quarterbacks, that quarterback number 2 should exponentially outscore that RB wide receiver 7, because that would be it, right? I mean, you're kind of putting in your 7th best wide receiver running back or your 2nd best quarterback. I mean, I would rely on, for me, my team, Matt Ryan or Drew Lock to outscore any team's 7th best position player. So I think it's essential to be able to start two good ones, and having 3 helps. But it is nice that you can start another position player and you don't have to, like you said, you're not forced to have 3. You could get by with 2 good ones.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's ultimately where our valuation differs a little bit. But I do agree with you. Like if you have that third one that you can start in there in a bye week, like you're gonna beat somebody who only has 2 and probably can't start a quarterback on a bye week in their flex. So I get what you're saying, and it's really just a small, minute difference, but it does make a difference in lineup construction, though, for sure. So anyway, moving to number 4. This is where my team is ranked, the Heroes Dynasty Deserves. We both have me ranked at 4, finishing at 9-4. My team will probably be a little interesting. I do play Ryan week 1. I'm imagining that I will lose. And a lot of that is due to the fact that I'm waiting for some of my young guys to break out. DeAndre Swift, Cam Akers, and CeeDee Lamb are 3 huge pieces of my team now. And just because they did not get the preseason games or the long training camp like they usually get, and Swift being slightly injured, it might take them a week or 2 to establish themselves in their offenses. As long as they do that, I'm confident they will. My team will probably become pretty dominant as the year progresses, as I'll be able to start 3 huge RB1s on a weekly basis. And my wide receiver depth is also a pretty key strength for me. Being able to throw out Chris Godwin and Kenny Galladay on a week-to-week basis is pretty strong, and then following that up with guys like Landry and Boyd is also pretty solid. However, I have had major struggles finishing down the stretch. As we know, in 2014, I started 5-0 and missed the playoffs, finishing, I believe it was 7-7. So not a great finish to the year. And of course, we all know what happened last year. I started 8-2 and then lost my last 4 games to finish 8-6 and missed the postseason by just a small margin. So I think this is the year that I finally get in and actually get in for reals. Like I'll be the number 4, like if you compare it to last year. But I also think I have the talent for a potential title run. So, I mean, we'll see what happens.
Brendan, how have you not made the playoffs yet? It's incredible. I mean, like you've had some great seasons and just haven't found a way to get that last win in there.
Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah, with the expansion to 6 playoff teams, I think you're safe. You got a little wiggle room in there. I have a hard time imagining you don't make it. Like you said, though, I mean, your rookies will play a big part this season, but really for the future as well. Even if you do kind of get that 5th or 6th seed this season, I'd expect you to contend for a title the next. Well, I was going to say a few years, but several years really. Swift, Akers, the coaches are saying right now they don't have a clear-cut number one role. They're going to have to earn it, looks like. So, yeah, like you said, you might struggle out of the gate with the lack of touches. May not be productive. CeeDee Lamb, he's an interesting one. I don't know what to think about him yet. A lot of mouths to feed in Dallas. But, man, if you could get that Dak to CeeDee Lamb combo, oof, that's deadly. That's going to be deadly for the rest of the league. Yeah, I don't know who you play twice. I know we're still kind of figuring out some scheduling kinks, but if you could get with the two teams you play twice, if those could be relatively easy, then I think 9-4 is a safe bet. If not, you might go 10-3.
Yeah, let's hope I avoid a double gauntlet of Ryan and Mr. B for my doubles. Let's just pray for that.
That's right.
And you'll see why in a second. But anyway, moving on to number 3, we've got Madden's Ultimate Team owned by Johnny. We both have a consensus rank of 3 on this team. I have them going 10-3, Scott 9-4. Not really much of a difference, but I mean the starting lineup remains legit once again. Not quite as scary as past seasons, as the core has aged a little bit with Julio and DeAndre Hopkins moving to a new team. But I mean, the quarterbacks are just scary. Patrick Mahomes and Russell Wilson is a very, very deadly 1-2 combo. And I would argue if it's not the best, it's definitely the second best quarterback combo in the league. Hard to get much better than that. However, if the bench is needed at all, it could really spell a disaster for this team. If somebody goes down and they can't back it up with something, it could be a struggle for them. They came very close to being the first repeat champion in the league last year, coming up just short to the Mr. Beast. But their window is definitely still open for another title run for at least this year. That's for sure. What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, I hope I get you on a bye week, Johnny. I'd really like for Mahomes to be on a bye week. That'd be good. Maybe Russell if necessary. But if you face Johnny, if any team out there faces Johnny when there's no bye weeks going on, good luck. Like you said, Brendan, that quarterback 1-2 punch is deadly. Really's got top position players, at quarterback, running back, and receiver. That last bullet point, window is still open for another title run. I got to say that window's going to be closing fast, Johnny. I mean, this year, next year will be interesting. I don't think you're better than last year, especially 2 years ago. You lost Antonio Brown. You got rid of that big contract, but you're not getting any production out of him with him being out of the league. The free agent draft, for those of you who don't know, he had to pick up like 8 $1 players. I don't think they'll be very serviceable. But 9 wins seems pretty solid. You're going to be in the playoffs, Johnny, so nothing to worry about. Good luck this season. I don't see you winning a championship, though. I think you're beatable overall, and it might be time to look towards the future. You might have to start thinking about what 2 or 3 years from now looks like.
Sure, yeah. Maybe the bench does make a difference in the postseason. If somebody were to get injured or get COVID in this particular season, it really does matter because this might be the last year the window's open, considering the cap crunch that happened with the expansion and everything else. So, yeah, the window's open this year, but it might be closing fast. So, anyway, moving on to number 2, we have Rye Bread, owned by Ryan Smith. Ultimately, the rich get richer. Ryan's team got better in the draft, got better in the expansion draft somehow. I don't know how that was possible, but it did. And they've just been a consistent top 3 finisher in the league. And probably going to be a very serious title contender once again. They just need their chips to fall their way in the postseason. They've gotten a little bit unlucky in the past couple of postseasons with having just bad weeks at the wrong time. And some of that does come down to coaching in the end, as we mentioned with the quarterback start-sit decisions. But if they get the chips to fall their way this postseason, there's really no reason why they can't win another championship.
Would we like Rye Bread to go 0-13?
Yes.
Absolutely. Will that happen? Unfortunately not. Ryan, one day in the history of this league, when we look back like 50 years from now, I hope to be able to say you went through like the worst 10-year stretch in the history of the league. You're due for it. But unfortunately, it's not going to be this year. Looks like your run of playoff streak is going to continue. I'd be surprised if you don't get to 10 wins. Like Brendan mentioned, just now and earlier in the video, you might be a little over leveraged on quarterbacks. You got to make sure you start the right people. Your coaching decisions haven't always been there. Luckily, your bench players are usually solid, and they are again this year. I'm a big fan of your draft. I'd like to have Jerry Jeudy on my team personally, especially with Emmanuel Sanders leaving. Your rookies could really be the big difference. I mean, already today, we're sitting here during game one, Chiefs and Texans. Hilarious ran for 100 yards. Yeah. That's impressive. I think Jeudy will have a good year. Like I said, your quarterbacks are solid. You could win another championship. I hope not. I hope not. I hope all your players get COVID. You're the worst commissioner ever. But I got to say, 11-2 seems like a pretty good bet here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. I think the 3 losses could just be once to the Beast, once to Johnny maybe, and then maybe just a bad quarterback start-sit decision, and that gets them the 3 losses. But yeah, I would be shocked if they don't get 10 wins this year, unfortunately. And we'll get into a little bit of the rich get richer kind of expansion draft analysis in a bit. Not to ruin any surprise or anything, but we do have a little surprise at the end regarding that. Anyway, moving on to number 1. Drum roll, please. The overall best team in the league this year, according to us two, is the Mr. Beast team, owned by, of course, Mr. B. Both a consensus ranking of 1, 11-2. Maybe just 2 fluke losses here and there. For some reason, you have a depth hole at one of the weeks, but man, that starting lineup is legit. And if Tampa Bay figures out their RB, I mean, you have the starter on your roster. So whenever that happens, I mean, this team is a powerhouse. I mean, you have Lamar Jackson, who is a running back and a quarterback. So, I mean, you're putting up like consistent 30 points a week. That's pretty deadly. And then you, of course, have Drew Brees, Derrick Henry. I mean, the list goes on with all these great core players on your roster. And they're going for back-to-back titles. And they're trying to see if they can be the first team to do it. And I think they really have a good shot to do it this year if they can avoid the injury bug and COVID. I mean, I think a champion, at least making it to the championship, seems likely.
Mr. B, I think you still might have my least favorite logo. I know that's something from like Harry and the Hendersons, but to me it looks like it might be you. It might be a picture of you, actually. But could be a gorilla you saw at the zoo. I'm not sure. But, you know, your team is good. Had to rank you at number 1 because you won the title, right? I mean, someone's gotta knock you off your pedestal. We don't want to see a 3-time brew. You're brewing your 2-time beer at the Boydock House, apparently. You know, as good as that might taste, don't really want to be drinking any of that.
No.
Your biggest problem, you know, if all your players are healthy, I think you should win the championship. But you know, if Lamar Jackson was to go down, that could totally change the complexion of this league. But as it stands, your starting roster solid. You got some good options off the bench. I'm jealous of your receivers. I really wish I had Devontae Adams on my team. I know we kind of had some trade talks earlier in the offseason there, but best of luck to you, Mr. Beast. And Even though I hope I win the title, I'd rather have you win than Rye Bread. I'll say that.
I would concur with that, except I don't want you to win. I want myself to win. So, I mean, anyway, that concludes the power ranking section of this video. Obviously, we have the contenders on the right, headlined by the Mr. Beast at number 1, and bookended by the Dynasty Champions at 6. And then the pretenders on the right, with the Vegas Koalas being this year's Bubble Boy and the Discount Belichick's hiding in the basement. So that's it for the power rankings. Feel free to comment at how much you disagree with them. We'll be happy to fight you in the comment section. Anyway, before we move on to the next section of our video here, we do have a word from our third sponsors each. Scott, if you want to get started with your third sponsor.
Okay. If you go to Buffalo Wild Wings and you get something else other than Caribbean jerk, you're doing it wrong. Caribbean jerk is the perfect blend of spice, sweetness, tanginess. It's kind of indescribable, to be quite honest with you, but it's very flavorful. It's very tasty. And I highly recommend, whether you get the boneless or bone-in, Caribbean jerk is the way to go. Now, that's only if you're at Buffalo Wild Wings. Remember, Frank's Red Hot Buffalo Sauce is also a good option. I wouldn't recommend mixing the Fairlife chocolate milk. I know I said that earlier, but Caribbean jerk, island spices and peppers, good choice. What do you got, Brendan?
Yeah, well, speaking of things that taste good, my sponsor is Pepto-Bismol. I've had a lot of this week. Nice pink, sort of like minty flavor to wash down some of your food after you had, maybe you had some Frank's Red Hot sauce and you mixed it with some Fairlife chocolate milk and it's not really sitting well in your stomach a little bit. So you got to take some Pepto-Bismol. I know I wasn't feeling too well this week and things were coming out the back end and I really had to rely on this stuff to get me through a couple of days. And I really can't thank Pepto-Bismol enough for that. It really made my life a little bit easier when I was sitting on the pot. So it's good stuff and it helped keep me from shitting. But
that's good. Is that bubblegum flavor? Is Pepto-Bismol kind of tastes like bubblegum?
Yeah, it's like bubblegum a little bit. Bubblegum,
Okay.
kind of minty. It's not great tasting, but the benefits that it provides are well worth it. It's not meant to taste great. It's meant to help you out. So
Okay. Good to hear.
it's got 5 symptom relief. It relieves nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, and diarrhea. So yeah, it's good for just about everything on your digestive tract. So yeah, good stuff. But anyway, speaking of shitting, that brings us to the next section. We're about to take a dump on Kevin and Chris. We have a very, very big rant about the expansion draft. So first, I'd like to start off by saying, what the hell were you doing? What the hell were you doing? Was there a plan? Like, did you even put any thought into the expansion draft? Like, did you think that, oh, maybe I'll do this, and if my opponent does this, maybe I'll pivot to another strategy or something? Like, did you have a plan? Like, looking at the things that you did, it looks like you just went in there and flew by the seat of your pants and just picked players based on who you liked the best in real life instead of actually focusing on the Dynasty League. You know, I'm pretty sure that every team, with the exception of maybe like 1 or 2 players that were picked, were jumping for joy, thanking their lucky stars that they had you two making the picks, because it couldn't have gone any better for them. I mean, do you want to win in this league? You had a prime chance to hurt teams like the Rye Bread or Mr. Beast or Alex's team, the Green Machine, or the Dynasty Champions, or the Heroes Dynasty Deserves. You had chances to hurt all of these teams big time, pick players off of their roster. I mean, what were you thinking? I mean, we're just gonna break this down, starting with like probably Chris and Kevin both, but starting with Ryan's team specifically. I mean, if we're just looking at the players that Ryan got to keep and the players that were picked off of his team, it is absolutely unforgivable what happened in this expansion draft. So I guess Chris's first pick, I can maybe understand going after Travis Kelce. He's the best tight end in the league by far. He's going to win you position battles at tight end. I can maybe understand that. And Ryan pulls back Odell. You know, not much of a trade-off there. I'll take Kelce. Kevin immediately follows that up by picking Cooper Kupp. Now, I don't know what would possess Kevin to pick a wide receiver like Cooper Kupp, who's not even the number one on his own team. He's not the number one. That's probably going to either Robert Woods or Brandon Cooks at the time. Like, Cooper Kupp is not the one, right? And he's got all of these other players who are number one wide receivers or starting quarterbacks that he could pick off of Brian's team. He picks Cooper Kupp. He could have had Jared Goff. He could have had, I'm trying to think of who, he's got another quarterback I can't think of at the time. He could have had Jared Goff. He could have had DJ Chark. He's the number one wide receiver in Jacksonville. Showed great flash last year, and you pick Cooper Kupp. I don't get it. I don't get it.
Yeah, I think those picks 2, 3, 4, and 5 are all extremely questionable to me. And then even looking at 7, I'm okay with Thielen. I mean, Will Dissly at 7, but let's start back up there. Melvin Gordon, getting up there in age, you know, at the time he was still with the Chargers, but it really turned out to be rough for Kevin. I don't see him being successful later in his career. And then Chris follows that up with the guy who definitely is on the downtrend. Lots of different options there that he could have gone. And then Chris decides to go with a $50 running back. Chris, this is a dynasty league. If this was just a one-year standard league, sure, I'll give it to you. But you just spent $73 on 2 aging running backs. That's not going to get the job done in this league, man. And you're gonna learn your lesson the hard way, I believe.
Yeah, it makes no sense for the other teams too. Like, Johnny was probably hoping and praying that Le'Veon Bell was picked off of his roster, and the gods answered his prayers. And Ryan was probably hoping and praying that Todd Gurley we had picked instead of another running back off of his roster. And sure enough, Chris was there to answer the call and pick Todd Gurley for no exchange of draft pick whatsoever. You could have asked for picks. You could have done it. And instead, you just make Ryan's and Johnny's life the easiest life in the world. They were probably sitting in a hammock drinking a pina colada, laughing at you with how bad those picks were. I mean, it's just embarrassing. And then it gets worse. You pick Keenan Allen next after wasting $73 in salary on 2 aging running backs. Keenan Allen is $60. You do realize that, right? You had wasted half of your cap space in 3 picks. 3 picks. It's mind-blowing. I don't get it.
Well, just wait for the next pick. Big Ben Roethlisberger.
Oh, God. Yeah.
If you're gonna get an expensive quarterback, I mean, I was gonna say, I mean, Cam Newton was an option. Cam Newton would have been a legitimate option had you not spent $60 and $50 on Allen and Le'Veon respectively. Chris, how's Keenan gonna do for you this year? Is he gonna be productive?
That's right. You don't have him anymore. You lost him to Ryan. Of course, Ryan. Yeah, Ryan. Just enjoying the spoils of the expansion draft. The rich get richer. That's what I was talking about earlier. Thank you, Chris, for making Ryan's team better. Thank you. The league appreciates it. Oh, my God. And then we're getting to Kevin, who still doesn't have a quarterback at this point in the draft. Look at his picks here. We've got Cooper Kupp, Melvin Gordon, Adam Thielen, Will Dissly, Evan Ingram, David Johnson, Philip Lindsay, Robert Woods, Sony Michel. Oh, we've got Nick Foles at 19 after all of these quarterbacks have been taken back before him. Gardner Minshew, Jared Goff, Drew Brees. Oh, my God. Like, what are you doing? it's basically a crime what you did. It is basically a crime. Like, Nick Foles was the first quarterback that you picked when all of those other guys were sitting out there just begging to be taken by you.
I really want to point this out. Nick Foles was taken. Take a look at who is still. I mean, he still could have got Cam Newton and Phillip Rivers. We can't forget about Phillip Rivers, too. That my dad took back third. That's the third player my dad took back. Still a good caliber quarterback who should put up a lot of points.
Yeah. It's just unacceptable. Like, I don't understand what the thought process was. Like, did you forget that we have to start at least one quarterback every week? Like, that's a fantasy industry-wide standard. Like, you don't make it through a draft without drafting a quarterback at some point. You had one maybe starting quarterback at the end of this draft. Ridiculous. I don't get it. I do not get it.
It's tough. It's tough to think about too. Maybe it's possible that they were getting bad advice from family members. You know, maybe Alex and the Beast were kind of whispering the wrong things in Chris's ear. Maybe that's possible. I don't know. But Kevin's future brother-in-law, Ryan. I mean, you can't. It's hard to take advice from Ryan. He's known for being deceitful for sure. I don't know. I don't know what to say, but they had a lot of time to prepare. I think they were, in all honesty, I think they were well versed in what we were doing. I know it's hard to come into a unknown situation, but I know they had the rules in front of them. They knew the roster, how everything was going to work. And,
they could have asked questions regarding, like, okay, how does the league normally function? Like, what positions tend to be more valuable than others? They could have asked around the league to get people's opinions. And I'm sure people would have been at least somewhat truthful. I doubt we were trying to screw the expansion teams, because I mean, that's no fun when you're welcoming teams in. I mean, I would have been honest and said, you know, quarterbacks are pretty valuable. You should probably consider taking them in one of your first couple of picks. So I mean, the time was there, the resources were there, and all you did, both of you, was just take one dump after the other. That's partially why I asked Pepto-Bismol to sponsor us, because if you would have taken some of this stuff, it might have prevented all of the dumps in consecutive order on all of your picks. Like, it was atrocious watching it unfold.
Maybe that's why you were sick this week, Brendan. You were thinking too much about the upcoming football season and the possibilities Chris and Kevin could have had for this year.
Yeah, I mean, you could have been at least a playoff like contender, if not having an even better team than that. I mean, you could have had both of you could have ended up getting two really solid quarterbacks if you would have just taken things seriously. Maybe you did take it seriously, and maybe that's the wrong phrasing, but like, man, you blew a huge opportunity. I mean, you only get one expansion draft. It's not like this league is going away and you can join some other dynasty league and get another shot at an expansion draft. I mean, this was a one-time shot thing, and you both blew it, and it's ruined the league to some extent, because it allowed Ryan – you had the opportunity to knock Ryan and Mr. B down a peg and not only lift your own teams, but also lift the tide of the other teams as well, and you did not do it. Like, that was the big opportunity to knock Ryan and Mr. B's team down a notch, because they were getting pretty solid. They were starting to become sort of dynasties in the Dynasty League. And you had the opportunity to knock them down a peg, and it didn't happen. And it's kind of embarrassing. And every time I look at this expansion draft, it just makes me sick. It makes me sick to my stomach. I'll tell you what. It makes me feel like I drank some of that Frank's Red Hot, is what it makes me feel like.
The bottle was empty after. That's how you feel.
Yeah, it literally makes me feel like I drank that whole bottle.
Yeah, you mentioned the top contenders with Ryan and Mr. B, but the reality is, maybe it's probably too high of expectations to think you compete with them year one. But then you look at the Vegas Koalas, that's who you kind of have to overcome to get a playoff spot year one, and it's just mind blowing to me. Kevin, you had Nick Foles again. You could have drafted Phillip Rivers. Now, understand the implications of what that could have done for your team and the Koalas. The Koalas would have just been left with Carson Wentz only. I'm not even sure what the Koalas were doing in terms of their protections. Completely disagree with it. But somehow they kept Phillip Rivers, and they have 2 starting quarterbacks. And it should that's what could get him into the playoffs. I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, if I was approaching this expansion draft, my main strategy would have not only been mining value for my own team, but also attempting to severely hurt the other teams with my picks. So, like, what pick could I make that would really hurt their team, right, and give me a better chance in the process, right? And like you said with your dad, picking Phillip Rivers would have severely crippled his roster. And I mean, you look at Ryan's team, picking Jared Goff would hurt. Picking a guy like DJ Chark would definitely hurt. And I mean, losing Travis Kelce is a loss, but Ryan was already writing that loss off. Like he was already expecting that to happen and preparing for it. So, I mean, you basically played right into pretty much every team's hands with their like the players that they left exposed. I know personally, I wanted Philip Lindsay to get picked. Like I was hoping and praying that he got picked, and then I could pull back Tyler Boyd, and that's exactly what happened. Basically, if you would have told me exactly every team's strategy and what they wanted to happen and what did happen, they matched up pretty much perfectly. So.
Yeah, well, yeah, just kind of wrap it up. I mean, I do wish them the best of luck. I do hope they're successful, this year and in the future, but just wanted to point out their flaws. Not a good draft.
Yeah, hopefully they can start making up for it in future free agent and rookie drafts, but they definitely put themselves behind the 8 ball a little bit with this it's a display of something in this expansion draft. It's a display of something. Wouldn't call it skill. So anyway, rant over. We'll end on a positive note. These were obviously our power rankings for this year. We think that they're fairly accurate and objectively ranked. If you have any thoughts on it, let us know. But overall, we wish the best of luck to all the teams this year. Of course, no more luck than our own teams. Our own teams would like the best of luck. Maybe everybody else can have a little bit less luck than us. With the best of luck, maybe the Dynasty Champions will be playing the Heroes Dynasty Deserves in the championship this year.
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
I'll agree with that.
So, yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. This video is long enough, I'm sure. Good luck the rest of the season, and thanks for tuning in.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you soon.
Adios.